Brodes Media.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Open Ice Hits. I love the hockey action every single night. Marchand scoring goals that makes my jaw drop and hit the floor, and I'm staring at the TV for literally 10 minutes with my jaw wide open because that was so nasty. The Habs, I'll tell you something, Durso. I'll tell you something. When we were watching that Nashville series in round one, I said, Nashville has no chance. They're done. But when the Scheifele thing happened and the Habs were scoring, you were like, this Habs team has it. They're going to fight for one another. And because I made that mistake about Nashville, and I said, look, they're done. They're screwed. I said, I'm not rolling the Jets out. They're not screwed. They'll have plenty of time to come together as a team and be okay. And now their asses are golfing already. So I don't know what road to take anymore. Maybe I should just stop talking.
You thought I was too high on them.
I did.
You're looking at me like I'm crazy. Like I'm thinking that the Habs are going to just roll right through. No, that series. And it's funny because that series, I actually wrote down, we didn't do Monday. I wrote down after the Sunday game, series is over. And then, sure enough, look what happened in overtime. Look exactly what happened in that game 4. There's so much that doesn't surprise me about this team right now. Like they really like their contributions that they're getting from all over the place. And it's just, everything is working for them right now. It's really, I'm almost surprised to say it like in that sense. Cause I don't think I expected it. I definitely didn't expect them to be here, but once everything happened, you go, look at where they are now. They've won 7 games in a row.
It really is crazy. I have a buddy of mine who is so disgusted with this, and I'm curious your thoughts. He does not like, and he's rooting against them, and he's actually pissed off watching them succeed because in any other division, they would not be involved but the North Division because they only had 50-something points in the regular season. But here's what I said to that to counter him. This happens in all of sports. How many times, look, we're here in Philadelphia. The NFC East was garbage. There's always a division where a division winner in football has 9 wins, but maybe there's another division that there's two teams that one team has 13 wins, the other team has 11 wins, and that 11-win team doesn't win the division. Or in baseball, it's the same thing. If you're with the Yankees and the Red Sox, they're winning 100-plus games, and then there's one division that has an 88-win team win the division. That's sports. It's not just a fluke in this league. Like this, that's basic any knowledge in sports.
Well, and is that by the logic too that like I saw it last night, and I'm not getting into this because look, for me, this is a vacation from that side of things, but I saw it on Twitter. The Philadelphia Flyers, which is where we're based out of, obviously, 56 games, 25 wins, 58 points. They don't make the playoffs. The Montreal Canadiens, 56 games, 24 wins, 59 points. They do. It happens that way. And more or less, I feel like every year we're looking for this team. The team that you go, they're not supposed to, not even just be in the playoffs, but they're not supposed to be here at this stage of things. Who's the surprise, right? There's always one. Here it is. I mean, here it is presented to you on a silver platter with the way that this division went down. We all sat there and said it at the beginning of the playoffs. We're waiting for Matthews and McDavid to meet in the second round. It didn't even come close to happening. And then you get to this series, and now this series wasn't even close.
You're so right. I'm just thinking, we were thinking Matthews, we were thinking McDavid, we got Cole Caulfield, who, by the way, all these young guns, do we play them, do we not? He gets the overtime game-winning assist to Tyler Toffoli, who started off the season red-hot scoring goals, specifically against the Vancouver Canucks, but he woke up, and Corey Perry, but I'll tell you the difference here between maybe the Flyers going on a run and the Habs doing it. Carey Price.
Yes, I'm not disagreeing with you. Now, see, I look at specifically at game 4, and I look at the shot total, and I look at the way that game started. I went, that's a team that smelled blood. They came out and they were ready to go, and it's like 42-16. I mean, in a way, that's almost not even a great game for Carey Price because he finished with 14 saves. Like,
fair point.
Seriously, like, and it's not to take anything away from him. He's been great in the rest of the series. You know, he had game 2 was a 30-save shutout. Then he allows 1 in game 3 that kind of came at a point when, I mean, Montreal already had their stamp on that game. So you know where things are. It's funny that the two dynamics, and I wrote notes on both of them, and you already mentioned the one, like Do we remember when Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Cole Caulfield weren't in the lineup at the start of the playoffs for this team? They didn't play. Like, now they're on a 7-game winning streak, but they lost 3 of the first 4. And why? Because they didn't play the guys that really can make a difference. But in saying that, my other point is, what year is it again? Corey Perry, Eric Stahl, Tyler Toffoli. These are past Cup winners who are bringing that winning pedigree to a team that's young, that's energetic, that's got the goaltending, that's got the stable defense. Because Shea Weber's a blast from the past right now, too. He's playing as well as I think we've seen him in a long time. And then you bring these guys in, and now you say, hey, Cole Caulfield, hey, Nick Suzuki, hey, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, all these guys who are younger, who don't have the playoff experience, follow the leader. And they are doing it, and they're playing like the unit that they have been for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and it's gotten them where they are right now.
You know what's crazy? You think about it with the general manager and everything that's happening in Montreal. 2 series ago, it's what's going to happen here. He's been here for X amount of years. The Canadian fans are getting upset. And now all of a sudden they're going to end up playing Vegas or Colorado, which,
right.
You know, I can't roll. As much as my instant reaction is good luck.
Right.
I can't roll them out right now with the way that they're playing the game with the confidence and swagger. But how much of this, to finish off that point, it's just crazy in general, though, to think about their general manager and how much that the fan base, I think, maybe, I don't know if toxic is the right word, but they're typical fans, right? They get all pissed off. I can't believe it. And now here they go on this magical ride, and all of a sudden, he's probably going to get another 5-6 year window without the criticism being as heavily as it would have been if they fell to a Toronto team, which, by the way, was significantly better than them. So would it have been rational to get all fired up and said, this guy's got to go? He's been there for a while, to be fair. So there's always time for change after a certain amount of time.
All right, you can tell me if this is off base or not. I'm going to try to branch out into a different avenue with this then, because did you see the video of Stephen A. Smith saying that the Toronto Maple Leafs are the Canada's Dallas Cowboys, right?
Yeah, yes.
Then the Montreal Canadiens, to me, kind of feel like the NHL's version and Canada's version of the Pittsburgh Steelers in a way. You've got the heritage, you've got the long winning, the winning ways of the previous generation, if you will, because nobody in Canada has won since 1993, and it was the Montreal Canadiens back then. And right now, an entire nation is linking onto this team right now, going, if it's going to happen to this team, because they haven't even had a team in the Final Four in how long, right? Like,
so do you think
Canada
other Canadian markets are pulling for the Habs? Because people hate the Habs, though.
I'm not saying that they're pulling for them, but like, I feel like it makes it, like, again, it's like that sense of it makes up such a large part of the market. Like, this to me is one of the 2 most recognizable Canadian brands in hockey. I don't feel the same way, and it's no offense to any of those organizations, but it doesn't feel the same way with even the Edmonton Oilers, even with the Vancouver Canucks, and they've been there before, and they've had strings of success over the years. Whether you look at Vancouver making a cup run 10 years ago, or you look at the years that Edmonton was the greatest team out there because they had the greatest player out there. It doesn't make a difference. I think that that's still the brand that's most recognizable. And I think I think it's more the rivalry that we think of, that we go like, do you think that Leaf fans are sitting here going, we want the Montreal Canadiens to win for Canada? Probably not. Right. But it's still a recognizable brand around the nation that I think that there is a large contingency out there that's going to be behind this team to try to be the one that breaks this thing. I mean, this is going, what is this now? 27 years? Something like that? 27, 28 years since a Canadian team has won a Stanley Cup. So I think that any Canadian team that could bring it back is kind of going to get some support from, it feels weird to call a casual Canadian fan, if you will, but I think that there could be something there to that. That there's this group that wants to see anybody from Canada win. And you're going to link to this team right now.
So how much of this series, because I don't really want to go too heavily back on this topic, but it's clear it played a role on this series. So we talked about the hit of Scheifele. We did not know how many games he got after our last podcast. So he ended up getting 4. We talked about even entering this year's, and when the trade happened for Pierre-Luc Dubois, one of the big things stressed for Winnipeg was they have center depth. And they do, and you can utilize that center depth, and it's huge with your versatility going up against some of these other Canadian market teams. You lose Scheifele. I guess we'll start here. Were you okay with the 4 games? Because I thought the 4 games was a good number for me. And he accepted it. I thought that he had a good response to it. I'm going to accept it. He did go a little bit off on the whole situation of his family getting abused by people on social media, which is a whole nother element of society, unfortunately, that we're in. And but the 4 games, I was okay with it. You?
I was pretty much, I said I expected 2 to 3. Here's the other thing about it, too. In the playoffs, take the number, and in the regular season, double it. Like, I feel like that happens a lot. So I think that if it was 3, it would have realistically, like, it was kind of like 5, 6 in the regular season. Here's the thing, too. When you watch it enough, it's still a charge by the book, so that's where the suspension lies. There's not a ton else that was wrong, like, other than making the decision to not play the puck, and therefore it's charging. There's not a lot else that was wrong with it when you slowed it down and watched it. The elbow stays tucked, so it's not elbowing. He doesn't – you watch the video. He does not leave his feet until after making contact. The first point of contact, we can assume – there's not a good camera angle for it, but the first point of contact we can assume is shoulder to upper shoulder, so into the chest. So he doesn't vault – like he kind of vaults into him a little, but again, that's more of the nature of the charge. So it's hard to look at it and go, there's a lot wrong with this other than that you could have avoided the contact in an empty net situation because, and again, I get it. It's a split-second decision, but it's still a split-second decision that I think could have been avoided, and I think that's the problem. Outside of that, then I'm fine with what he got, kind of to an extent. I mean, you knew they were going to drop the hammer on him. You just knew. And everything else about it's wrong. He shouldn't be dealing with family getting threats and things like that. That's wrong. You don't take it out on his family. He's the guy who made the action. He can live with people not liking him for it and wanting him to be punished for it. But, because it comes with the territory. It's what you sign up for. But you don't go after a guy's family for it, and that's terribly wrong. And then, obviously, the team did suffer from it. I mean, there's no question. It changes the dynamic when he's not out there with the rest of this core, Kyle Connor, Blake Wheeler, guys like that, and Nikolai Ehlers. You lose that in special teams. You lose that at 5-on-5. And he's a good two-way player. Let's not take that off the table here. He's a good two-way player. So you lose that at 5-on-5, and it certainly could have created a different dynamic for Montreal and how they attack the game.
Well, let's pretend we're Winnipeg Jets fans, right? Let's say we're diehard Winnipeg Jets fans. Do we analyze this team and say the league took it from us? I accept the 4-game sweep loss because you lost your talented player. Like, to me, I look at this as, you need to – I don't know. Do I start questioning the room? Do I start questioning Maurice? Do I start questioning what's going on in there? Because you lose such a powerful player, there has to be more fight for me. I understand. I could see losing a series, but you can't go down that way. I thought that they looked like they lost their puppy, or it looked like they lost something where instead, you brought it up with the Canadiens earlier. You said there's something different. They're going to come together because of this. They're going to become a unit and go out there, and they're going to play like tough as nails and be a better team because of it. I saw the complete opposite with the Jets. It's almost as if as soon as they saw the news, they laid down and just stopped playing the game, and that doesn't sit right with me. So I just expected more fight, even without Scheifele.
So I think there's two things. You mentioned Paul Maurice, which is a good point because I think that there's questions. I'm not going to say that it means he's gone. I don't think he's gone, but I think there's questions. But I think that this is the leaning on Connor Hellebuck an awful lot to get you success. And defensively, I mean, I think at one point in time, I think they put out, it was Josh Morrissey and Neil Pionk were on the same pairing. And Pionk was almost playing better than Morrissey. And Morrissey's supposed to be your top guy. They don't have the defensive depth that they probably should to overcome waves of pressure in a game where you're getting outshot 42-16, for example. Like they don't have the defensive depth they need to. But I do think that to an extent where you're coming from is the offense dried up. No goals in game 2, 1 in game 3, 2 in game 4. So for the last 3 games of the series, after you played a game like that ended 5-3, you match that goal total for the next 3 games. One guy should not make the offensive total drive. And that, look, you're playing Carey Price, and it's playoff Carey Price. I get it. But it sure feels like they did not produce to that level. I still think the greater issue is the defensive side of things. I think that they don't have maybe the shutdown guy they would like to, and that's part of it. Like they don't even have so much as a Shea Weber. that I think could do. And Shea Weber's obviously much older, veteran guy, maybe not as expected to do this as other guys that, like, he's not going to get into the Norris conversation again the way that Victor Hedman is and Roman Yossi is and guys like that, but he's going to get the job done because you know what to expect from him. I don't know that Winnipeg has that guy. And maybe that's their target in the offseason.
I was going to say, remember a few years ago they went on that little playoff run, and then with the blink of an eye, they lost everyone, and their defensive core went to hell, and Trouba left, and I forget some of the other names, but it just seemed like they had this core, and then within a blink of an eye, everything kind of just blew up in their face, and they had to retool and reshape everything, and it seems like maybe they're still trying to learn it.
It was the years they had Dustin Byfuglien.
Dustin Byfuglien, yep, that's okay. That's the other name. I'm trying to spitball in my head here. Who else was?
No,
involved.
That's fine. But like, yeah, that to me was the big one because I don't think they've had a guy like him since he left or stopped playing, basically. You know, but yeah, I don't think they've had a guy like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm a little stunned that we're sitting.
Or maybe the guy they had was Trouba, but they haven't replaced him since he left.
Right. No, I agree. I think that there's some things they have to reshape there in Winnipeg. Not the easiest city, I guess, to kind of attract people to do it in. But we'll see how they go moving forward. It's going to be an interesting dynamic because there's a lot of talent there. They were a really fun, exciting team. You mentioned Ehlers who could put the puck in the net, and they brought in Pierre-Luc Dubois. And I don't know, was that as strong of an impact as you thought it was going to be? Because I'd say I'd be a little underwhelmed. Although, this is the situation. It's sort of like with Columbus. If Line didn't work out, it's not as if, oh, what a disaster, because Pierre-Luc Dubois was a disaster. So it somewhat counters. If you're Winnipeg and you look at that situation of getting rid of Line and bringing in Pierre-Luc Dubois, I don't know. I probably expected a little bit more of it to pop with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and it didn't. But considering what you had there and what you traded, is it that much of a joke of a attempt?
It's not. I mean, look, I don't remember. We weren't doing the show yet when that happened, I don't believe. So when it happened, it was one of these things of it was the right situation for both guys. It was clear both wanted out of the situation they were in. So let's make a deal, you know? And I didn't see every minute of that game last night. So I'm going off of what I think I saw on Twitter. I think I saw at one point in time he was on a line with Nate Thompson.
Jeez.
Like, I just don't know what it is with him. And I think I even remember, I have to go back and look at specifically at his draft year, but I think I remember looking at his draft year when he went third overall. I don't remember if I felt like I was a little surprised by that.
Oh no, you and everybody else were. Yeah,
I think there was guys out there that were more intriguing at that moment. And I'm going, that was an interesting one. I kind of didn't see that coming, you know.
He had 1 assist, by the way, in the 4 games. 1 assist. I want to see what he did in the Edmonton series. He had 1 assist.
It's hard for me to fault him for 1 assist, though, when, like I said, there 3 goals over the last 3 games for the whole team. So you had 1 point, you know, on 6 goals. It's not like you contributed your team contributed a whole lot to begin with. I mean, Carey Price was just that good, but to an extent, but
he played 15 minutes last night and was -1. You would think, you know, he would be logging in way more minutes than 15 minutes in a playoff game, especially when someone like Scheifele's down. So I think right there, the time on the ice is kind of telling you basically where he's at, especially because he was logging 20 minutes in Game 2 and pretty much 20 minutes in Game 3. So he's 5 minutes down in Game 4. I think that's pretty telling, you know?
Yeah, okay, so I went because I wanted to look up the draft year. It's an interesting year because it was the Matthews Line year anyway. So you're looking at it and you're going, Matthews and Line were so clearly 1 and 2. But like I'm looking and I go, like, I can skip a few names before I get to the next one that jumps out to me. Like Dubois is an interesting situation. Then you go to the next one and go, everybody thought Jesse Puljujarvi was going third because of the fact that he had such a great World Juniors. He hasn't really panned out completely. Like I think he's done in Edmonton, to be honest, after this year. Like I think they're going to move on from him. I have to go down to like I don't want to discount Oleulevi, who is in Vancouver. I think is just starting to make his way into the NHL, so it's a little early. But Matthew Tkachuk is 6th, and you go, all right, he's a guy who has been to an All-Star game. He's got, you know, some props there. Clayton Keller was 7. I feel like I got to skip down Mikhail Sergachev at 9, who was actually a Canadiens draft pick, but ended up in Tampa because of the Druin trade. Tyson Jost. Charlie McAvoy, but I feel like I'm skipping a lot of people to get to the gems of the first round, whereas the year before, and I think not the year after, the year before, definitely, in 15 was like there were hit after hit after hit. It was like looking at, the charts for music. Like, here's top 40, here's all the hits coming at you 1 through 10. You know what I mean? Like, you almost couldn't miss in 2015 with the talent that was there. And then 16, there's like gaps between, certain guys who you go, yeah, that's a standout. Like, there's even guys at the bottom who you go, they're in good systems. There are guys who you've seen break through to the NHL level who you go, but they're not standouts at this stage. And this is 5 years post draft, like,
yeah, now it's
so,
time,
It
but yeah, I
is,
agree with
exactly.
you. With Luc, Pierre-Luc Dubois is like, you can look at his numbers and you can look at Kachuk's numbers and I could put the problem is everything off the ice that goes with Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's not so much the skill level or the I mean, you can question the work ethic, you could question maybe the mentality, but in terms of point production and what he can give you 27 goals. He can give you 20 plus goals. He can give you what Clayton Keller and what Matthew Tkachuk on the stat sheet can give you. It's more of everything off the ice. It's like, I don't want to deal with this guy. That seems to be more of the issue, not so much can he play or not.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's an element of that translates. I mean, if you're bumping him around different lines and struggling to find a combination with him, how do you put up numbers if you're never in the same situation? I mean, there's a reason why we're going to get into, as we move to the next couple series, we're going to get into groups that play really well together. There's a reason. It's because things don't change with them. They already know what to expect from the guys they play with. They know what to expect from their line mates, and they just go out there and do business as usual. I don't feel like it's that with him. Like, it's a struggle, and I don't know where you go with this because we're still asking the same questions with these two players. It's going to be a year after they've been traded, and we're still going to be asking that question.
That's a good point.
Where are they going? Like, are they going to definitely end up where they were traded? Is it going to last for a long term here?
Safe to say, Tortsy and Patrick Laine maybe didn't have the greatest of relationships. How shocking!
Yeah, but see, now you've got a dynamic with that because he's not coming back.
That's
so
right.
You're going to have a new head coach there. So now do you address, like, is it kind of, without calling it this completely, is it kind of Laine wins and now he's the last man standing in that? So now you try with somebody else and see if it works out differently? I can't feel that way anymore about Dubois because, okay, sure, it didn't work with Tortorella, but now, like, something's not working with Paul Maurice either. At what point in time is it the player?
Right. Oh, yeah, it's definitely the player. There's no doubt about it. But you mentioned some of the other series. I think that's a good segue here to move on. And the Islanders and the Boston Bruins. All right, the Islanders are up 3-2, going back to New York, going back to Long Island. So we'll see if they can close it out in their home barn. I don't know where to begin because there's so much going on. That Marchand overtime goal a few games ago, I thought the Bruins snuck one out of there where the Islanders were applying all the pressure in overtime. There goes a short-sided goal he threw on net and picked the corner. That was amazing. Marchand, as much as I can't stand him because he's just annoying and he's a pest, dude, he is so damn good. Clutch, coming up with big goals. When we talk about Game 5, that filthy goal, when Pasta put the puck with time and space for him to skate into it, he toe drags, he cuts the blue paint, he's flying midair. Oh, my God, it was nasty. So, Bruce Cassidy yelling at the referees afterwards towards the media. He's going to get a hefty fine. So I'll let you kind of take it for a ride, Durso. I'm not stunned. This is the series that I told you I was excited for and had the most passion for because the energy's in the building, the physicality of the games, the structure of both teams. They're well-coached teams, well-ran organizations. It's lived up to the hype for sure.
Oh, it's definitely lived up to the hype. So I don't even know where to begin, to be honest. There's 3 games I'm looking at notes from. So I think the big thing for me that translates over all 3 and makes a lot of sense when you get to the 3-2 result that we're at right now. Matthew Barzal has been awakened. He got one, and now he's back. Like, this is the guy I remember from a year ago. This is the guy I remember from last summer. He's that good. He can, he can take over a game. We weren't really seeing it in the first round. We didn't see it in games 1, 2. Kind of didn't realistic. I don't even feel like that way in Game 3 to an extent. He finally gets the goal, but then you look at Game 4 and you go, look at his confidence in Game 4. Look at his confidence in Game 5. And it's funny that we're going to talk a lot about him, but we're talking about Marchand as well because here Barzal's no big guy either. You know what I mean? These are small guys that There, so I think we want to think that it's one of the, like, we think too much, or I hear a lot about how it feels like it's one or the other. You're either size and strength or you're speed and skill. These guys make up for the lack of size with effort and will, and make those plays that, like what Marchand did with that game tying goal in game 5. Now I'm trying to keep track of all of them.
Yeah,
game 5. That is a will play that is, I'm not going to let anything get in my way at this point. I don't care that I'm probably going to take a little bit of a hit. I'm going to have to go in and make contact to make that play, but I don't care. I'm going to do it because I can make that play happen. And he thinks it up. The smarts come through, and then he goes and executes. And Barzal's been the same way. That's what I saw with Barzal with the game winner in game 4. And you go, look, it's a bounce because it doesn't have to bounce his direction off of that chance. But when it gets towards him, the thing's not on the ice, and he bats it out of midair. Skill play from a smart hockey player. And that's what I see with that. Now, the funny thing for me is that in talking about Marchand so much in this situation, I didn't want to single one guy out because I feel like it's not fair to single one guy out, but I think there's an obvious one I can. Where's Taylor Hall's production gone? And maybe that's good. It's good on the Islanders' part. I'm not trying to say that like it's all Taylor Hall's fault. He's just not showing up. I think the Islanders are doing what they do, but it's like I feel like we're back to if it's not Pastrnak, Marchand, Bergeron making it happen, who's making it happen for the Bruins?
Let me ask you this. Is it a little bit of, because Taylor Hall came out unreal for the Bruins, right?
Sure.
And we were thinking, wow, this is amazing. And we know he's won an MVP before. We know what the top talented Taylor Hall can be. But how much of this is, because I'm a big back of the baseball card guy. If you are a, half a point per game guy and you come out with a point a game for a long period of time, eventually you're probably going to go back to a half a point per game. That's just the theoretical numbers I'm throwing out there to kind of put it in perspective. How much of this is Taylor Hall somewhat coming back to reality a little bit, knowing that, okay, it was such an extreme different from Buffalo to what he produced so far in Boston that he's somewhat just coming back to reality a little bit.
And I think the opponent matters too, obviously. I mean, they're known to shut people down, but...
Very true.
Look, I don't want to gloss over game 3 either with this. Taylor Hall makes a great defensive play and turns it to offense and gets the whole thing going.
Amazing.
But since then, so that's a Craig Smith goal. Since then, Marchand wins the game. David Krejci on a power play in game 4. That was Boston's only goal. And then they scored 4 times in game 5. And again, it's Pastrnak twice. It's Marchand. It's Krejci again. That's it. Like, I feel we're saying the same names a little too often again. Like, that's why I said I don't want to single out Taylor Hall, because Taylor Hall has produced in the playoffs and has produced a little in this series. It's kind of going back to the Washington series. It's no Jake DeBrusk, no Charlie Coyle. Like, these guys who did give you a little bit in that previous series have gotten nothing in this series. And again, that's half the Islanders knowing how to shut down guys like that, and half this is the Boston Bruins to an extent. This is what we asked ourselves all this time leading up to. Do they have the depth scoring that can account for? And the funny part is that, like, you look at game 5 and you go, they got it from the top guys. When you get 2 goals from Pastrnak, 1 from Marchand, Krejci scores 1. If you scored 4 goals, don't you think you're winning a game?
Well, that brings up the perfect point here of the Tuukka Rask getting yanked for the
yeah,
third
that was
period.
A little surprising.
Well, they said after the game that
they said it was injury related.
Yeah, more managing. And that also brings up Carlo. So how much of this is, you're right, you score 4 goals, you think you win. Well, if you score 4 goals and your netminder is having to deal with some sort of nicking injury or something that's bothering him a little bit, there's kind of your answer on why possibly that 4 goals did not help you. And when you're missing Carlo as well, I mean, that's a huge difference too, where, that's a player that you need, a player that can absolutely help you. So how much of that played a role in the outcome of that game 5 specifically?
It does a little bit, sure. I mean, you're trying your best right now to kind of get through the guys that the penalty kill suffered big time without Carlo and Miller and guys like that, and you're trying to make up for it, right? It kind of goes back to the Winnipeg conversation. If Connor Hellebuck wasn't carrying Winnipeg through some of those games to keep it close, then you were getting that's how you got 5-1 Montreal in a game, because he wasn't going to bail you out every single time. They were continuing to get these glorious chances and they kept burying them, right? That's what the Islanders do. The Islanders, I didn't write down the shot total. I know it was something extreme in this game. It was something like 38-19 or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
I'll check it out. I'll check it out.
In the last game, it was something 44-19.
Yeah,
That's the final shot total.
That's aggressive.
So what's the story? I mean, to an extent, like you get what, like if something's bugging Rask a little bit, then you can understand why he's not lights out. But he's been, like, let's do it this way. That was a 2-1 game, technically in game 4, that is really just 2 empty netters tacked on top of it. So 4-1 is not the whole story. And then you had 2 overtime games previously. If he's dinged up, he's not showing it a lot.
I agree with you. No, I understand that completely. Maybe it was something that was tweaked in the game, and maybe, who knows?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm not trying to take away from it.
How much of this is, you talk about the shot total and all these penalties and the power plays, and I'm anti, because the Sixers just tried the same thing. The Sixers sucked for 40 minutes of a basketball game, and they were good for the last 8 minutes to come back and make it like a 2-point game, and oh, what a great comeback. But the refs put us in foul trouble. No. You sucked for 40 minutes. Don't tell me it was the refs that put you in such a bad spot. You sucked for 40 minutes. Now, I'm not going to apply that same logic fully with this, and I actually do think that there's value in what Bruce Cassidy's doing, because he's working the refs for Game 6. Now, when there's penalties called in Game 6, I'm sure the referees are going to be thinking about it differently. So he's working the refs and working for the future, taking the hit that he's going to get with the fines. But there is an element of it that it's like, I don't know. I hate the ref conversation. I really do. There's so much on the ice that we talk about that matter way more than the referees. And look, the Islanders score power play goals. So that matters. That does matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. They're scoring on the power play. That matters. But I do think that there's an element that takes away from some of the mistakes that you made, and takes away from, because his argument basically was, it's not that what you're calling isn't a penalty. It's when the other team does the same thing, we're not receiving that power play either. So that's a little different than horrendous calls are being made. It's what's not being called. I don't know. I hate the ref thing. I hate it.
I know. He was trying so hard to tread lightly to an extent, because he'd sit there and go, we're not, like, he said this before too. He didn't use these exact words, but it was funny. He called them the New York Saints, and then he's used before. He goes, we're not angels, but we're not doing anything differently than they do. We get called, they don't, right? I mean, look, there's one element to me that sits there and goes, as much as I understand where you're coming from, kill a penalty. They were 3 for 3 at one point. Kill a penalty. And again, I understand things don't break your way sometimes. He mentioned a broken stick on one where they didn't get a clear, so they score off of it. And certainly, I watched some of it, or I went back and watched some of the clips. Sean Corrali didn't take a penalty. Let's be real. That's not a penalty in a playoff game. Let's be real, and I don't without trying to segue it too much. I don't want to gloss it, to go to a different series to an extent. I hated game 4, I guess it was game 4 of the Tampa Carolina series, because there was no flow. How many penalties does Carolina get called for? And here's the weird part. You missed one on Carolina in the beginning of the game where where Kucherov gets clipped with a high stick by Brady Shea. You put him in the box and you pull him out. It should have been a call. John Cooper had every right to be upset about it. Then you call a non-hooking penalty. You call a hooking penalty that was not there on Jordan Staal and give him a power play. There's all this stuff going on. When Svechnikov took a penalty for roughing, while Sergachev should have been given a cross-checking penalty right in front of him, same spot. You saw one, you didn't see the other. But there was just no flow to that game with that many penalty calls. And it's this is the playoffs. This is the playoffs. Enough with letting the officials get so in the way of some of these games that we're not getting good game flow. I love the idea of seeing a 6-4 game. It's wild and everybody's going crazy about it. But how much of that is, look how often you're shorthanded. You can't continue to sustain anything when you're shorthanded that often. So I understand the element of it from that sense, where if it's a lopsided amount of penalty calls one way or the other, and maybe, look, to an extent, the other gamesmanship thing that was done that I understand a little bit, maybe, and look, I think you're stretching at this point to complain about it, but it was done. Barry Trotz said something about Bergeron and in the face-off circle, and Bruce Cassidy comes out of the game and says something about, well, have a little bit more respect for a guy who wins the Selke every year, or is up for the Selke every year and has been a guy who's marketing the league really well and all this type of stuff. And it's like, this is how it's done though. Like if they point it out, then like, and I get it, don't have outside influences. I respect that, but like, I just don't understand what you want them to do to an extent. Like, what do you want the officials to do other than have complete reform? Because I feel like this is the conversation we're having too often.
Yeah, no, it's basically it's working the and I'll use this. I know we're like using a lot of different sports today, but hey, maybe that's just the way that this show rolls. But with that Doc Rivers thing, is like one of the things that I wish he did was, there was a time when the Sixers were down 20-plus points, and there was a foul that he challenged, and it didn't get overturned, and he was not happy. Well, what you do in that situation is go get a technical. Go get a technical. Get in the face of the refs. Get pissed off. Scream. Do what you do in basketball. Pick up the tee. So then it's on notice and it's like that's what Bruce Cassidy's essentially doing here. He's picking up the tee, if you want to reference it in a basketball way.
Sure.
Where he's working the refs. You use them. So then for next game. So it's all to set up for the future. For me personally, I'm not saying there's not value in it. I'm not saying there's not validity to it, because there is. I just think there's so much that happens in a game like that where I look at it more like you. Go kill a penalty. That's your job. Go kill a penalty. You're going to face adversity. You're going to face things that are unfair. Championship teams kill the penalty. Kill the penalty. And how about that one play where it was a huge turnover right in the middle of the slot? Tick-tack-toe. Well, it ended up it was a nice play along the wall that went into the middle of the slot, and it was a beautiful tic-tac-toe play, wide open. You left the guy wide open, 2 inches in front of Tuukka Rask. How about get pissed off about that? Like, that's where my mind goes in all of sports with the frustration with the refs. So here we go. We have a 3-2 series lead. Do you anticipate a New York Islanders home victory to move on?
Wow, that's tough. I see. Here's the thing. I'm not counting the Bruins out of the series by any stretch.
Stole it right out of my mouth.
But see, here's the thing. There's an element of it to me where the home ice thing really makes a difference. It's funny. For some reason, I didn't see it with this series as much. We're gonna jump over to another one in a couple seconds that I see something different. But in this one, I don't want to guarantee anything. And it's funny. See, it's funny to close out the official conversation really quickly too. In Game 4, I kind of thought that the Bruins got a favorable call, if you will, because in what universe was what happened to Barzal slashing? In what universe? That's not slashing,
Right.
I even wrote down, you're rubbing off on me, Brodes, because I wrote it down in the notes. He got a how do you do from
you wrote down what did the note say? Can you go?
It says Barzal. It said because first of all I wrote down rough stuff because two fights. Taylor Hall in a fight, by the way. Since when? But then I wrote next to it, Barzal gets a how do you do?
How did you? Can you tell me if you used the dashes in between each? Was it how do you do, or was it no dashes?
No dashes.
You text me sometimes and you go full AP lit or like AP on me, AP style.
I do go AP style on you.
Yeah,
you're right.
going AP style. I'm like, dude, I'm surprised you didn't go AP style with that and make it like a hyphenated how do you do or something of that nature.
No,
but
there was no hyphens there.
I respect
I mean,
that.
maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I was jotting it down relatively quickly.
Maybe we could check the AP book and see what it would say with the actual spelling.
We need to check what the AP says about. Yeah, all right.
How do you do? All right, so we'll move on. We'll go to the next series here. The Avs and the Vegas Golden Knights. I'll tell you what. When the Avs went up 2-0, they won game 1. They gave them a spanking. They bent him over. They took the wooden spoon right to the rear end. And they were moments away. Like, I thought the Avs pissed away game 3. That could have been 3-0 Colorado. And here comes Vegas with the storm, and they just the electricity of the building, it takes over, and they go on these rushes and they score these goals. And now with the blink of an eye, it's 2-2. And I really thought game 3, like if Vegas pulls this out and wins the series, I date back to that game 3 where that element of surprise I think Colorado was in the locker room taking off their equipment going, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, so I think I was like you. I was thinking, I don't remember exactly how much time was left when the tying goal was scored, and then eventually the winner was like right after. It was 45 seconds later. But it was something around in the range of maybe 6 minutes, just under 6, something like that. And So for me, I think maybe with about 8 minutes to go, I'm watching the way that Colorado's playing that third period, and I'm going, look at where they are. If they find a way to pull this off again, because they're not the better team in this game right now, but if they find a way to pull it off again, how do you even like? It's almost disappointing. It makes me think of the way I felt after Game 2 of the Islanders Bruins series. Like, thank goodness Vegas got it back into it to an extent, just to make it interesting. Because at 3-0, you're going, that's not what we expected at all. And I think it would have been a little bit weird to look at it that way and go, it's a 3-0 Colorado lead after 3 games, and they've been thoroughly outplayed in 2 of them. Like, Vegas deserved a better fate in Game 2. The call being what the call was. I know you didn't like it, but they take advantage on the power play, and the game's over, and that is what it is. Now you see this, and then now you see them playing this game, and again, it's another power play goal by the same guy. It's Mikko Rantanen again, who then has them in position to possibly win that Game 3, and then Vegas comes back. And talk about 2 games for Jonathan Marchessault, who I think that goal that he stays with, I think the best goal he had is the one he stays with and gets the bank shot to tie the game in Game 3.
You like more that bank shot one?
Yeah, you know what? Because you saw it coming. You saw the way that the play was broken up, and you saw just a quick little chance back to the front, and it rolls in behind him. And there you go. And then the deflection, and Max Pacioretty's been huge.
That one was so big for me. See, I had a good reaction to that. It's crazy. There's been a lot of like my facial expression. I watch these games alone in my man cave in my office while I'm getting stuff done. But when these goals happen, I'm not lying to you when I tell you that my mouth was dropped and staring at Brad Marchand's goal, where I was in awe, and like I literally stood there for like, and I recognized, like, Brodes, your mouth is still open, dude. Like, in my head internally, I'm saying that when Pacioretty tipped that puck in. And not because it was the flashiest tip in the world or the sexiest goal ever, but it's because of how quickly it came after the tying goal happened. I did the same thing then. It was like, wow, somehow Vegas is really going to steal this. Like, wow, the energy, everything. It's like, Brodes, your mouth is wide open again, dude. Shut the mouth. Why do you? Obviously, that happened before the Marchand goal. But it's just, man, that was insane.
We've talked about this before, because you know that I'm the type of person, I can't sit still while I'm watching a game. I don't matter who it is. Okay. Literally, now earlier in the series, this is going back to Game 1 of this series, though, when Nathan MacKinnon scored his second goal of Game 1, that, literally went from 0 to 60 in half a second at center ice, and then just cruises around and coasts in. I'm like staggered over at that point. Like, I'm like going, oh my God, you're kidding me with that, right? Like, that's just like it literally nearly knocks you over with just how impressive it is. So I know where you're coming from. I know that feeling. And that's what I love about playoff hockey, is because of the fact that this happens maybe multiple times a game where you're amped up for it because the energy level's so high that it doesn't matter who you're watching or whatever. So now to Game 4 for a minute, if I can shift there, because now Vegas has the momentum. I mean, Colorado gets on the board really quickly, and then it just becomes, like, slowly but surely, it becomes the Vegas show that it is. And I just, like, I know now the series is going back to Colorado. Game 5's coming up. It's obviously a huge game. It sets up the scenario that we talked about previously that I like, where it's when you get through 4 like this and it's 2-1 to 2-2. Now whoever gets to 3-2, it makes Game 6 huge, which then would make, like, so now each of the next 3 games is huge no matter how you spin it. So I love that. I almost wonder, and I want your thoughts. I look at the way that game went and how, Marchessault putting up the hat trick, getting basically, as soon as he scored the third one, game over. Like, you knew the series was tied. Is Game 5 now kind of a must-win for Colorado?
Yeah, it is. No doubt it is. And I think going home will help stop the bleeding a little bit, because you have the atmosphere behind you, and they're a damn good hockey team that's not just going to roll over and lose 4 straight after winning the first 2. I just don't see that happening. I see this as possibly a 7-game series, but I do agree that, see, this isn't the same feeling of the Islanders Bruins, where I can see the Bruins going into Long Island, winning a game there, and then going back to Boston. And I can even see the Islanders winning on the road in Game 7. I don't think that that's crazy either. But when we think about this series, I think the home ice advantage is taken to a whole nother level. And I do think that Game 5 is must. You do not want to go back to Vegas's crowd. And look, it's not impossible. If that was the case, I don't think, because game 3, they were moments away, to an extent, moments away of coming out 3-0 and winning that first game in Vegas. So it's really not impossible,
Right.
but it really is difficult. And to a degree, I do think so, because the last thing you want to do is be on life support heading into Vegas.
If they lose game 5, they're losing in 6.
Yeah.
That's the way I felt after game 4. I'm looking at the way Vegas is going now, and I'm going, all right, game 1 was what it was. Game 2, you kind of got burned a little bit by that penalty call in overtime. Now I'm watching 3, 4. You win game 5 on the road. I don't see how you're losing it on home ice right now. I just don't see how any team has the counter for that. And
I
that's,
don't know what made me think this. I got a little sidetracked in my brain. You know
Okay.
what we didn't touch on with the Habs? There was a back-to-back. Wait, Sunday, Monday, and then if they would have had to play again, it would have been Wednesday. I don't know why. I was thinking of the home ice and going to different towns and all,
Right.
but, like, what the hell? I know they started late. I get it.
Yeah,
but, like,
and that's what I
wow.
told you. Like, it's just about getting them on track. You know what else we should touch on really quickly before we get out of here, too? The
Yes,
fact that
we
they're
have 1
going to
minute.
the border thing. The fact that they're going to let teams go over, U.S. teams come over, so you're going to get the true home ice experience in Montreal for the semifinals. And if
Are
it
they going to
goes
have
further than that,
Well, they had 5,000, but by the time they get to these later rounds, are they going to
oh,
be
do they
more
have
fans?
5,000? I thought it was still 2,500.
Oh, maybe
Did they up it?
Excuse me. Maybe it is 2,500.
Because
Maybe it is.
I was thinking 5 for the next round. Like, I've heard that there's
Imagine going to Vegas and then going to Montreal. You know what I think they should do instead of that? And I know it's probably unfair, but they got to host Montreal in a different city and make it where you can go in, like, down south where, like, there could be 20,000 people. It probably wouldn't have it would probably be dumb.
So when Carolina gets knocked out, because we didn't touch much on that series, but it's like it feels kind of close to over in a way. Like, Tampa's just been really good. So when Carolina gets knocked out, you want Montreal to go play in Carolina?
I mean, I'd rather have 20-something thousand in a building than have 5. I know it's stupid because you're not in your hometown, but
Yeah,
dude.
look, I don't think it's going to be as much of a they're not going to be as shell shocked as they would have been with nobody there to then go play in Vegas or Colorado. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
it's that.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing things out there. That's what we do here. But all right, with that being said, I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode of Open Ice Hits, and we're maneuvering through a schedule, so we'll have the next one up when we can a little bit, maybe later on in this week at some point. Thank you
Sometime.
all.
I don't know
Yeah.
when, but yeah.
Yeah, sometime is back end of the week. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time.